Face front true believers. Bluedragonfive here.
And Rohith Dhar.
10 years ago, Marvel's Daredevil stood above the rest and showed us the quality storytelling other shows were blind to. Now, with its official return, the burden falls to us to discern the truth by asking the question, will the new show measure up to the original? Join us as we start Discerning Daredevil. Born Again. Tonight we're talking Season 1, Episode 7, Art for Art's Sake. So we got Rohit here. Rohit, what do you think of this episode?
I think for all intents and purposes, I think it was a fine episode. Um, I think that this episode has great moments, but in terms of it being necessarily a cohesive, really well done episode of television, it was fine. And I think that's going to be something that we'll discuss a little bit more about. Is that for a lot of people, I don't think this show is necessarily bad per se. I think there's really good moments here and there, especially with the Hector Ayala stuff. And I thought, the last we saw of Muse, there was a really, invigorating moment, really exhilarating. But I think with just the nature of the overhaul, I think a lot of stuff with Muse, Heather, really supporting characters, I think got just cut out, and so we're kind of just left with this very paper thin characterizations. And I think Muse just has a lot more, as the kids say, aura or coolness to the character, but there's really not much to flesh out the character in terms of ideology or psychology. And I think this episode would have hit more if there's more with Muse and Heather throughout the course of the season.
All right. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think this was all payoff, no setup. That's kind of the best way I'd summarize the episode. And that I feel it was a nice logical payoff to the Muse story. Admittedly, though, very rushed given the editing chaos of this season of the show, which again is like the big annoying grain of salt I keep having to give this season. Where again, we had a really great pilot. We had a really great episode one. I felt honestly a great first week. I thought we really hit the notes we needed to, and really kind of instilled a lot of hope. Instilled a lot of hope in me. But just going, I don't know. You can see a lot of battles between two different shows that we're doing here, and again every time like, there's a lot of things to praise, and then just being held back by it could have been a little better. And I don't like feeling that way with Daredevil, because I think what we have still works. It just feels like again we're like there's a good payoff here to a Muse story, but it feels like we shortchanged like the development, the build up to the satisfaction in which we caught him. So it's I think it's a solid episode. It has a very exciting climax, like Rohit said. Daredevil's back. We're actually letting Heather Glenn do stuff, which is progress for that character here. Kingpin, he's in the best thing I can say about the episode is Kingpin's in rare form. And this is a Kingpin, like, again, Kingpin's gotten back on track, which has been, honestly, was my biggest criticism of the season so far, is that he was kind of languishing for a few episodes. And then once we beat the crap out of Adam, we were very much on track of like, okay, I think Kingpin's found his footing. I think we're getting back on track to where he should be. Not just because he beat the crap out of Adam, but I'm just saying that it was kind of like we're going back to like paralleling him with Daredevil. Their stories are intersecting more. We're saying something about it, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So again, it feels like I have a feeling that ultimately we're going to be hitting our payoffs. Just our lead-ins are going to be very choppy because of the the mitigating circumstances.
Yeah. To briefly touch on Kingpin, it's like I can sort of see where you're coming from, but I don't know. For whatever reason, the way Kingpin has been characterized, I don't know if it's the way Winston Darker's acting this season or the way.
Well, like I said, it was rough earlier on, I feel, in the story department. But you're saying it's performance.
I don't think the performance is bad per se. I just feel like the way the Kingpin is portrayed in this season. And I feel like people's criticisms of his performance in Hawkeye and in Echo, I think they may have more merit in this show than the other shows. And I think for me, I think part of it is just that when Kingpin is like in the domain or in this area of Daredevil stories, especially in the Netflix show, there's this kind of like great white shark quality to him.
Mm-hmm.
That when he enters in a room or has a conversation, he holds the center of attention, the center of gravity.
Yeah.
And I feel like, yes, he's been the mayor. And I don't know, maybe part of it is just what I want out of the story and the direction that the showrunners went, whether pre-overall, post-overall, going with this. It just feels like he's become very human to a fault in his role as mayor. And you know what it reminds me of? I don't know if it's sacrilegious to say this. It feels very similar in my mind to how like Tamora Morrison, went about portraying Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, that is kind of heresy, man. That's a low ball comparison there. I mean, look, I get what you're going for. I'm just saying it's not the exact same.
It's not what I want, but I feel like that this character, at least more so with Kingpin, is that there is this, because here's the thing: Boba Fett has just coolness to him and an aesthetic. Kingpin, what I appreciate about Kingpin is that when he came into the scene, he has the ability to command the room, command the space he occupies in it. And it feels like in the show, he doesn't do that. He has his like Kingpin mannerisms, but it just feels very, pathetic to a certain degree.
Here's what I think it is, Rohith. And I could be wrong, but to me, at my core, here's what I think it really is. I think the reason for that is, again, I've mentioned this before, but last week we really got something that I think really kind of hit upon, like how we're getting it right in certain places. And so overall, we've been missing the motive because of the finale of Echo. We're missing like the why we're not hitting on the season 1 thing of like, he initially did want to help the city, and that's ultimately what his mayorship should really be about, refocusing to his beginnings. But now with all the capital and like a legal standing, which should be driving Daredevil out of his gourd, just like, how does this happen? But as far as like, Kingpin like being like the focal point, being the shark that he is, and just kind of like being kind of the classic, kind of Kingpin stuff that we all kind of know and love. I mean, last week, I felt that when he was rallying the troops, when he was with the anti-vigilante task force. That moment, again, and here's the thing, what it feels like, again, we've lacked, and I don't know how much of this might be reshot or not, I don't know. The whole thing of, it's Kingpin using the mayorship to basically get away with doing his usual stuff, but now, again, he has the support, and this is like the whole Devil's Reign thing that we're trying to pull in for the show that sounds like season 2 is going to be all about, but we're getting kind of glimpses of it here and there with the assemblage of the Vigilante Task Force, where, again, he's a criminal with like official backing, and that's, again, it's kind of like the whole Superman Lex Luthor becomes president kind of story. It's essentially what we're looking for here. It's essentially, I think, what the cornerstone of like this whole Kingpin as mayor thing is, and what it should be. But again, we've been kind of like spinning our wheels with, he can't get anything done. Well, why am I interested that he can't get anything done?
I mean, also, like, for me, I think
he's finally getting stuff done.
So here's my thing. I'm kind of jumping a little bit ahead in the episode, but when Matt has this sort of dialogue or his monologue with Heather about like life being fake or just he kind of feels he's kind of asleep, and he's just trying, and he needs to wake up and have some sense of agency in his life. I feel like we never really get that moment with Kingpin. I think it would be interesting to see Kingpin maybe wanting to do good, wanting to do, like, want to be effective and legitimate, and becomes mayor and is slowly disillusioned with reality. And that goes to Kingpin because that's where he has the most true power. And I think that would have been such a powerful moment or a powerful arc to see play out, where a man who trying to turn legit, tries to do things the right way, can't get anything done. And so him becoming Kingpin, the one that we all know and love, there's an element of tragedy where Wilson Fisk could have had the opportunity, and he just hit a wall. And if he wanted to get through the wall, he had to be Kingpin. There's so much. Like,
well, basically, it's what we have. You're right. We're not lingering on like how it's affecting him, though. Is that what you're saying?
It's like we don't really. make a thematic point about Wilson Fisk being essentially impotent with being mayor. Like the whole the way we really see Wilson being emasculated is the whole affair with Vanessa and Adam. But it's like I just feel like there needs to be a broader point about how Wilson Fisk, maybe in a way he's trying to do right by Maya. He's trying to prove to the people that saw him as a monster that he can change and turn, and he tries doing the right thing, but he's constantly stymied by bureaucracy, or it never goes far enough. And then maybe in midway point, there's a snap, and it's like, look, either if we're have to make change, to be a monster. And that quote from Cecil, it's like you can either be the good guys or the people that save the world. You can't be both, and that's probably should have been Kingpin's realization. It just feels like Kingpin is kind of like sleepwalking throughout the show. And I don't think it's Vincent D'Onofrio's performance. I think it just feels like they want him. They like the idea of Kingpin being mayor, but they don't really think about what does that mean psychologically for him to want that position, and how does he feel in that position, and have that be like a consistent, like thematic through line. I think for the Daredevil section of the show, they at least had a strong idea of how Matt is feeling. And I think they understand how Matt's feeling because of Karen Foggy not being in the picture. Whereas for Wilson Fisk, the fact that it's Vanessa, we don't necessarily have a strong sense of him being lost or just without things important to him. Yes, Vanessa had the fair and all that stuff, but it's like Wilson Fisk is not really his lowest. Maybe he is his highest. And I think because of that, there's just not a sense of urgency. I just feel like Wilson Fisk Kingpin he just kind of stumbles into being an active part of the story. Where I think for Matt, even though he's trying a new life, there is still that sense of agency. There's still that forward direction, even when he's not Daredevil. And I just feel like that. I hope in the next season, Kingpin is likely going to be in the second season, has a more direct, sense of involvement in the events of the story. I just feel like he just kind of been, on stand. Like I've seen Kingpin in in his office so many times, but there's nothing, invigorating or captivating to me.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to the plot. All right. So here's the episode in a nutshell. All right, so Daredevil's back, and he's hunting for Muse. No, not Jason Muse, other Muse. He's hunting for Muse, who currently has Dr. Glenn in his sights. Now, Fisk, he sends the task force to stop Muse. Heather ends up beating him to the punch. Luca suggests taking the Kingpin out, but Vanessa turns the tables on him. And in the end, Kingpin makes heroes of the task force. Mm-hmm. That's the episode. All right, so I guess let's start breaking it down. Let's get into the arcs. Okay, we're going to start with. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to start with Matt Murdock, as we tend to do here. So, we have Matt. He's in the shower, kind of washing off the sin. One could argue, given the cross in the scene. He's but no. I don't. I mean, maybe an argument be made for it, but essentially, he's washing off the deeds that he did here. He's bleeding a little bit in the drain. So essentially, it's he's got the cross, he's bleeding. And he's lazy. It's kind of the cornerstones of Matt Murdock all in one scene. If you look at it in that sense, it's kind of the religious component, the violence, the red, and and then the hotshot attorney.
Daredevil, both holy and horny.
Well, yes, technically doubly horny, but yes. Yeah. So, but I think the reason we open on this shot is because he's back, and we kind of signify that it's all the hallmarks that we're familiar with is kind of represented there. And I love that the main takeaway I have with this arc is kind of where we start with him in the episodes. That this is kind of his demented version of a happy place, where again he's it's kind of like the idea when we grieve, we fall into bad habits, into old habits, I guess more accurately, whether good or bad.
Mhm.
And again, I still attest, and we'll see how it goes. I still attest that after his meeting with Frank Castle, his goal that ultimately kind of got him to put on the costume again is he's going to the cutesy way I like to put it. He's going to save the Foggies. He's going to save the Foggies of the world, and he's not apologizing for it this time. That's kind of where he's at right now. So he's kind of returning to that lifestyle, but there are consequences that come with that. He's his loved ones are concerned. Between Heather and Cherry. I mean, Cherry's refusing to help his crusade to stop serial killer. But I love that this time around, Matt, he's standing up for himself a little here. He's not just, and again, I know this is kind of the mandate, and I don't know how much this is like something they could salvage or not, but the word on the street is like they're very much going against like kind of the speechifying that we do about vigilantism and Daredevil, which obviously it's very necessary in season 1, but season 2 we may have hit it a time or two extra, and they're trying to kind of not do that here. And that's the thing. So it feels like this time around, he's just basically saying, you know what? There was a time when you called me for help. You know that?
Man, this is where I wish it was Mahoney.
I know, right? That was the big line. I'm with you 100%, Rohith. It felt like, okay, that line only makes the most sense for Brett Mahoney.
Like it feels like Daredevil Born Again in this iteration. It feels like we missed out like a Daredevil Born Again season 0 that like had characters like Cherry, and Kristen McDuffie, and we could have got to know them well, and then season 1 could have just been a season 2, and
well, technically we could have 7 seasons of Zero if you think about it.
Anyway,
no, seriously, technically we could have, because it's 7 seasons of here's what happens from point A to point B.
Yeah, no, but where Matt's feelings are about his life, I'm of two minds about it. On one hand, it's interesting in a meta way for the people post overall in contextualizing Matt's arc is that he thinks that the life he has without Foggy, without Karen, there's a fake. It's nothing. It's not really significant or substantial, but it feels like that kind of realization or observation about his life. It feels like it's trying to cover up the fact that because of the overall maybe significant arcs or characterizations for characters like Kristen McDuffie, Heather Glenn, Cherry have just, and maybe Muse to a certain extent, just kind of been cut down. And it's like, we're just kind of like lampshading, hey, they're not that like 3-dimensional. And Daredevil knows that. And it's like, on one hand, it's kind of cutesy in a way. And two, like, what is sort of Matt's solution or next steps if he thinks his life is fake? Like, right? It's just, I feel like I don't know if Matt is necessarily put in a good light in having that kind of observation, right? Because let's say in the prior season, if Matt had that kind of observation with Foggy and Karen, I think we would have a nice dramatic moment where Foggy and Karen like choose him out for saying that, or questions about what do you think what is
you're saying Heather feels a little too agreeable in that scene. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or just like
she doesn't really fight. She kind of, there's like a moment where he says, "Well, not you," and then just kind of gets away with a lot in that scene.
Yeah, because think of it this way, like Dragon Thief. Here's it this way: imagine you had a close friend or partner, or whoever, who tells you they think that their life is fake, and like, oh, you're the exception. Like, would you not have concerns? Like, okay, like if you feel a strong sense of dissociation with your life, and you have bruises on you, that is a cause for concern. I feel like Heather should have been like, okay, that's even more reason for you to get there, like, right? Because if you're just not being attuned with where you are, and you're having this level of grief, and you think like it almost feels like for Matt, like nothing has, like he doesn't feel like he lives in reality like with Foggy. Like when Foggy died, he feels like he's in heaven or just some nightmare that some like version of Limbo. And I think it would have been something. I think it would have been really interesting from a character level for Heather to really, push back against this kind of like really nihilistic, perspective, right? Like, think of it this way: if any other character said that, it's like, oh, this character is just in a dark place, and either this characterization of the story is about getting them back to the light or preventing their nihilism from going even worse and leading them to harm people. And I think that's just something that maybe because of the way this shows Frankenstein into existence, like we don't.
It just feels really condensed. Everything with Matt and Heather, honestly, it just feels very condensed.
And I'll say this is like as
the
much
time jumps aren't helping. Like the not time jumps, but I mean like the passage of time isn't helping it because it looks like we get to the I love you stage like already, and it's like, but again, if months have passed, I guess that makes sense. But like still, I mean,
it doesn't feel it. There's not a strong sense of time passage is what the issue is, and
where's our raindrop scene with Heather Glenn? That's the real question.
Well, I think also another thing is that like for Matt, to be the way he is, like I feel like when he like outside of Heather challenging him on this observation, I feel like the show's point is that like, hey, and Matt's saying this, Matt is in the wrong, or Matt should be in a place where he says, oh, this life is valuable. Like at the end of the day, it's like, are we just really waiting for Foggy and Karen to come back, and then we just kind of move on from Heather, Kirsten McDuffie, and Cherry? Like that is, I feel like with what the show was before, we were almost not privy to what the original version of the show was. But it feels kind of crappy to just take the work that the writers did. Maybe what they did wasn't that better than what we have now.
But I mean, look, to credit to those writers, okay, they're put in a bind where I think a lot of the MCU, again, they're flying blind and they're given stipulations of like, okay, you can't go here, you can't use this, you can't reference that, and it feels like it's a little limiting, right?
Or not? The writers pre-overall, or the writers that came on?
Well, no, I mean the one. Okay, I mean the ones before. I mean the ones from the original version where it feels like, okay, look, you cannot reference the Netflix show. You can't. We can't necessarily like reference a lot of the other projects that may or may not be going on because we don't know. There might be some talks with Netflix. They'll loop them back in. We don't know. I guess I just mean in general. Like it feels like I feel like they're working in parameters of like, okay, look, we need to fill the roles of the Netflix show, but we can't reference the Netflix show. So you're just going to have to basically, use the ground up characters that we haven't gotten to in the Netflix show. And we're just going to kind of build from there, but you have to make them measure up to, the awesomeness of the season, which does feel possible. But then when you have two conflicting visions, it feels like we kind of take out any juice they have, from under them, And
the thing is, I think what also would have helped is that as much as people had complaints about, Netflix Marvel shows being 13 episodes long or what have you, and I would say there's some criticism, there's some merit to criticism here and there. I think with Daredevil Born Again, it was like 18 episodes, and then eventually got split into like basically 2 9-episode seasons. I really think, I don't know if 13 would have been possible, but at least 10 to 12.
Yeah, 10 would have been a fair compromise.
10 would have been a fair compromise, because I think with at least 10 episodes of TV, you can have development for not just the big, centerpiece characters, but also have side characters have like story arcs and all that. Think of season 3 of Netflix Daredevil, where you have not just stuff with Kingpin and Matt, you have stuff with Foggy, Karen, and Agent Nadeem and Bullseye. Like they're just like all those characters are fleshed out and the storylines interact and intersect. And with this show, I think the mistake or I think the issue was for the original version of the show was just so micro focused on Daredevil and Kingpin. It's like, oh, these are the characters people want. It's like, well, these characters don't exist on an island. They're valuable because you have other interesting supporting characters that round out and bounce with each other. Like Daredevil, like Matt only works when he has people like Foggy and Karen and to bounce off of, and he has sort of the fun moments side characters like Mahoney, Turk, what have you. And Kingpin, I mean, outside of Vanessa, he has like Madame Gao, he has Wesley, he has even like whenever he's interacting with the people in the FBI, there's a dynamism to it. And I think the show is like, it's like, oh, this is the Daredevil Kingpin show. It's like, no, this is a show that yeah.
I mean, look, to their credit, the characters that they have, and as we've seen, they can pair well. They're kind of adaptable in that we can. You're right. They need people to bounce off, but it does feel like they can kind of bounce off of like pretty much anyone. As I'm based on the example of like we can put Daredevil with Spider-Man, with She-Hulk, Kingpin. We can drop him in as a threat in like the Hawkeye show, or we can put him with Echoes. And he can bounce. They can bounce off of anyone, but still they need a supporting cast that can kind of can like fit.
Like I think in Tiki's point, I think from when he and I were on this Discerning Daredevil, She-Hulk supporting cast is very well rounded and fleshed out, and that's a show that it's like half an hour episode. Like Marvel, Disney Plus writers can write shows where supporting characters are fleshed out, have personality, and can have arcs and journeys of their own that intersect and reinforce the main character's arcs and journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think it this way, it's like I can know, like in our head, if you and I were to be prompted to like think of writing like a Foggy or Karen scene, you wouldn't necessarily write the best scene in the world, but we have a good ear for like what is a scene that's like Foggy dialogue. And
we know it would be authentic to them.
Yeah, we know what their voices are. We know what their personalities, their tics, what have you, and that's why they're so valuable. There's something to invest in. Like Kirsten, Heather, Cherry, like the Detective Kim, they're just there. They'll have just basically very like. They'll have characteristics, but not characterization.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if for, like, Heather, we could have had an episode dedicated to her, and the same way we had an episode dedicated to Karen in season 3. Or we could have maybe had, like, Christian occupy the Foggy role, and maybe she finds out about Daredevil. Like, there's just so much can be done with these supporting characters. And it feels like, overall, we want Netflix Marvel back. And these two are the bastions of that era, so we're going to focus on them and just, really, basically, we're just trying to, divert the train back to just being continuation Netflix Marvel. And these characters that were conceived to just be surrogates or counterparts in the Disney, like, non-Netflix Marvel era of this version of the show are just kind of left, to hang dry. And so my hopes is that season 2, like, maybe they'll have more characterization, but I feel like, with the likelihood that...
Well, I have a feeling what's going to help season 2 is it sounds like, again, we would be having a lot of returning characters who are already fleshed out, so it would probably help them in the whole characterization department, but, we'll see.
That helps that you have already people that's already fleshed out, but I kind of hope, like, I would think if people, especially because Chris McDuffie is a character from the Mark Waid run.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware. I feel it's a travesty. We're not doing anything.
Well, and also not her, but like Cole North. He's a character.
No, we just introduced it. I think we're building on Cole North.
I don't know if we're really doing like he has like. Here's the thing, like there are characters that are from well acclaimed Daredevil runs, but I highly doubt they have as much of the personality and like vigor as those comic book counterparts. And I would say that like Foggy and Karen, with how big their histories are. And like Deborah Ann Wall's Karen is like miles above comics version of Karen. Like,
I feel that Karen's dead, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but like just in characterization and whatnot. But that's the thing. I think for future seasons of Daredevil, it's like Spider-Man and like a lot of like street level heroes, for the most part, you can't just have the street level hero just doing like finding people on the streets, and that's your show. You gotta have the quiet moments. You gotta have moments where the people that surround the streets are interesting, are worthwhile, and
aren't the same interviews like constantly.
Yeah, you gotta like. Why is this guy going out to save people if you don't care about the people that surround the hero, right? If you don't care about the people surrounding the hero, like we're just seeing fight choreography. We're not seeing storytelling, and that's that's the end of my monologue, y'all. So hopefully for future seasons, for these characters, they have more time to be fleshed out, developed, and that's something important, y'all. For writing a superhero show, for making a superhero thing, make the people that surround the hero important and valuable. Because why else a superhero does their job?
All right, so Matt. So Matt's horrified to find out that Muse is an obsessed patient of Heather Glenn's. So so a lot of potential there's a lot of potential here to re-traumatize him, like what happened with basically a very similar situation to the night of with Bullseye and Foggy and what happened there. Where basically his loved one's in danger by someone who is basically well, it may or may not be in action because of his actions, but the fact is we have like a masked kind of a masked villain of some sort threatening his loved one. So I'm sure it's not a happy memory. It's kind of putting him into crisis where, oh no, I don't want this to happen again. So he's very proactive here. I felt I think he's sorry, let me put this at the start of the towards the top of the episode. I think he's very proactive, and he's visiting Angela in the hospital. He's even if Cherry's not going to help him, he's going to find the serial killer. And I think I think he's justifying to himself. It's like a one and done. I think to some degree. Now, mind you, we don't know this yet. I'm just saying. I wonder if at this point in his arc, he's thinking it's going to be kind of like, again, kind of shadows of the really great Frank Castle scene from season 2 of Daredevil, where it's the whole he thinks with killing somebody, it's like kill one, and maybe we could just this one time. It's like, Red, you don't understand. That's not how it works. So I wonder to some extent, perhaps, is like, I'm going to come back and stop the serial killers doing a lot of bad stuff out there. But as we see here in the episode, he's still battling that violent nature that the Kingpin's been was kind of talking about in episode 1. The violent nature at play, and we've been seeing he's been enjoying beating the crap out of Muse. He's kind of enjoying being back in the suit to a point where, again, it's like that girl lost a lot of blood, because he might have been enjoying himself a little too much, and I think that's kind of a danger that he's facing here.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, in him, him coming back again, there's some danger. It's kind of like waiting in the wings for him if he continues to wear this suit. There's also the painful patterns of his prior life returning again, with how his loved ones are either going to be in danger or going to be alienated. And it's, and again, for example, I think at the end of the day with his arc, again, the good of he ended up saving Heather and saving Angela Del Toro, which is outweighing the risk. But how long will it outweigh the risk before he's putting on the suit more for himself than for the good of the city,
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like the moral jeopardy that Matt Murdock's probably going to be contending with, at least we're trying to say he's contending with this season. Okay, let's talk about Wilson Fisk. So, so I mean, I feel we finally we focused him with the at least in this episode. I feel we focused him with the writing and kind of the directing on him this season. I think he's we've locked into the parallels with him and Daredevil. He's getting from the start of the episode. I love our cold open. He's twitchy around the idea that Daredevil is back. And I think you can look at it like glass half full, glass half empty. It's probably a bad analogy for what I'm about to get into, but it just feels like he's like secretly happy that his playmate is back, which I felt was like the underlining thing with him beating up Adam. Like to some degree, it's like too easy for him. To some degree, he kind of misses the challenge of Daredevil, which is kind of goes hand in hand with the whole like his desire to return to being Kingpin. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, does he feel kind of cursed by the fatalistic relationship of he's applying his old way of doing things to the mayorship and it's kind of going his way. So success, the moment he does that, Daredevil's back in his life. So is it kind of like, he's happy that, on some level Daredevil's back. Maybe it's both. I don't know. I just love that throughout the episode, first and foremost, he's looking to confirm the Daredevil sightings. I love that's his focus. I love how this is like the top priority, even above the serial killer to him.
Mm-hmm.
he's looking at he's looking at this more as a challenge than a problem. He's looking again. He's looking to use the mayorship to rob Daredevil of the victory here. Of like, no, it's not about like stopping the serial killer. It's about stopping the serial killer before Daredevil can. That's kind of like that's kind of the fun aspect of what Kingpin's doing this episode, which I found I found kind of in character. I found fun. Again, there's a lot of pettiness with the Kingpin here, and we'll get into that with my blinding moment. But I love that on him.
Yeah.
He's again, he wants to keep and again, this is where the writing is going that I really wanted to go to from the start of the season, where the idea that again he's taking these opportunities of making whatever's happening in the world of vigilantism work to his advantage, where he gives the task force a win, and this forwards his cause about basically he's the beginning of the building blocks, the anti-vigilante thing that he's doing with this major win of like, look, he's holding up the mask and everything. So it's a win for Fisk. He's in a good place. His wife has his back seemingly again, so things are going good for Fisk. And that kind of the kind of that happiness seesaw. It's like Kingpin's up, Daredevil's down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think was I really appreciated, and for Kingpin's arc, I really appreciated that scene that he had with Detective Kim.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the way that he kind of transitions to focusing, or like just as he's hearing the background of Muse, and then afterwards he's just like, you know what, let's just I can take it from here. And Detective Kim, you can just see the look, and she's very worried about what Kingpin's going to do with this information about Muse. And I think that's kind of the moments I'm wanting more from the shows, where Kingpin, when he moves, it is scary for everyone. When he talks, like everything he does, there's a calculation involved, and there is an outcome that is scary for the person who's in his way. And that, I think, is something I wish like we see more of in the show, and hopefully in the like future seasons of the show. Kingpin is a person that he is scary because he has his mind and body that is toughened and focused on his goal and his vision. And anyone that gets in his way, they'd be lucky to even breathe after they have a moment with Kingpin. And
I'm still not convinced Adam didn't get his hands cut off. I don't know. I'm still not convinced yet.
I think what also I appreciated was that scene between him and Buck, and I think the shooting of it was interesting. There's a little like an interesting way to shoot Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, where he's by a window, and he's just and you see sort of his reflection, or just see him through the window, and he's talking about sort of the whole thing of vigilantes. And it's interesting the way he talks about like the vigilante problem, and how he's framing that any vigilantes, encroachment on his criminal activities is just taking away good old classic jobs for the working man. Using sort of that populist framework to his advantage.
Right. Okay, let's talk about Vanessa. So, Vanessa, so Luca, this episode, he suggests taking the Kingpin out after the whole $2 million tax, which she's on board. She's saying like, well, in regards to the whole that was my decision. Basically, she's kind of covering for what he did as like a unified front sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. But Luca's no dummy. He's sensing the lack of unified front and can kind of see it on her face that you're not loving this mayor thing either. You don't get it either.
Mm-hmm.
It is rather brazen of Lucas to just like, let's kill him. A little bit.
Yeah.
Look, I like where it gets us, but it does make here's my criticism with the episode from a plot standpoint. Well, again, just overall with the editing, I know the editing is like people are so sick of us complaining about the editing by this point, but regardless, it's that again with our payoffs here, I think this is a solid payoff for the Vanessa discontent that ultimately boils down to kind of this moment of loyalty. However, I feel it's lacking because I wish we had spent more time making us question like is she that has she gotten that potentially ruthless or like potentially that like disenfranchised, for example, like if she found out about what happened with Adam, or maybe she's a little scared of him because of that, or not scared, or just angry at him because of that. That would maybe add a little more tension to, oh God, is she gonna consider something like this?
Yeah.
But we're kind of, again, it feels like we're maybe lacking that. And I don't know if we're ever going to touch on the Adam. I hope we do. It would be kind of weird if we, a little weird if we didn't. Maybe I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it is very satisfying to seeing the love and loyalty to the Kingpin pay off with her. Where and her setting up Luca. I think that feels very.
Yeah, the way the Luca was taken out, in like that whole scene is like, oh, this
like
is
reverse Godfather.
Well, this is just very classic Netflix Marvel Kingpin stuff. Like especially with Buck being in the shadows, using the silencer and taking the silencer out. It's like, oh, this is classic Netflix Marvel.
Yeah. So like they're on seemingly on good terms, like like the whole hey Buck, ask Vanessa if she wants any food.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I do question if Adam's going to be a turning point for them or not, or if it's going to be a thing where she finds that, oh well.
I could see it. I mean, depending on how they go about it, it could be a turning point, and like if not in season 2, then like season 3. Considering how the reveal of to Kingpin of Karen killing Wesley wasn't done until like 2 seasons after the fact. So
True. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Muse. All right, so Muse. So again, Muse, we pay off. A lot of people accurately called this. It's the young man who started seeing Dr. Glenn months back. Reveal, it's Bastion Cooper. He's Muse. The backstory here being, he's a kid. Essentially, to sum it up, he was a kid who felt unseen by his parents. They pushed him into Taekwondo because they wanted an athlete, kind of some athletic accomplishments on the kid. This was, and I think what we're trying to connect here, but again, we only spent like an episode with Muse really, like beyond just him looking scary and like saying boo to girls who want to take selfies with him. This essentially, it feels like we're trying to like a relationship to violence here, where the idea is like this guy, he wanted to be an artist, and essentially the tools of violence were presented to him, and he basically he mixed the two ultimately.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. His first kill presumably was his Taekwondo teacher, presumably.
If we had a longer set of episodes, we could have had maybe not the traditional flashbacks like we did for Kingpin season 1, but like what we did with like Dex in season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Something we could honestly, it would have been cool to do, like how like for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, the beginning, where they talk about the tale of the Deathly Hallows and use like kind of like hand drawn animation to explain the story of the 3 brothers.
I've heard of it. Yes.
You ever seen Harry Potter?
No.
Oh my. Okay, so it would have been cool if in showing the backstory of Muse, we could have used Muse's art or like a sequence that was utilizing sort of the colors and the style of Muse's art to tell like Muse's backstory. So it's something that would have been creatively like outside the box or whatever. But just him just explaining his backstory, it just becomes just exposition. And the fact that he's been seeing like Heather and we haven't had any scenes with him between, when he shows up to say, oh, I am a big fan of therapy. We don't see him doing any scenes of therapy. And it's just like, we have Heather just doing like really generic like therapy scenes with Vanessa and Wilson. And it's like, I would have been great to see her have like a session or 2 in between, those 2 scenes. With
like a montage or something at the very least.
Yeah, or maybe an episode dedicated solely to like Heather and Bastion. Like there's something to maybe we can understand a little bit more about her feelings about Mask and whatnot. I think now hearing that quote about we've like there was too much speechifying. I feel like we've kind of swung to the other pendulum, but there's not enough speechifying. There's very little of it. And that's not to say that like characters always speak metaphors or abstracts all the time, but it's not like they don't speak like 0 times in like metaphors, abstractions, or ideal like there are certain moments in real life where people can talk about things that are not tangible, more like abstract or philosophical or psycho, like what have you. And I just feel like we didn't have that. Like Muse, like what is this reasoning to kill like he has this very politically charged illustrate like wall art graffiti.
I know that did bother me that we don't know why he's dialed into the vigilantes.
Or like it would have been interesting to, because here's the in like real life, like people who are like have political motivations involved by assassinations or whatever, they're not mentally the most coherent, and you can, and when you look at through their their journals or whatever, there's just some like vague political like ideas that kind of are interrelated or whatever. But for Muse, it's like we don't even know if he has any of those ideas or if he just has that as an aesthetic, right? It was interesting, and maybe like his fandom ascribe all these like deep thoughts or philosophies, but he's just like, oh, I just do it because it's like it's provocative or it's the trend.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels like what we might have been trying to do, but again, we didn't really ring the bell on it. So he basically, it seems like, so he took inspiration from Dr. Glenn's book, about, live without fear. At the very least, now mine is not really an answer for the graffiti art. I'm just saying in general for like what he does and like why he kind of approaches her like he does in this episode. Is that again, he's not trying to hide the violent nature, which again is like the only connecting point we have, unfortunately, being the only, between him, Daredevil and Kingpin. It's basically he's kind of like he's kind of combined with the blood epoxy. Or now there's a question here, which again because of our time skips, it doesn't not our time. There's kind of our settings or time between episodes. Like how long? Because Muse is a mess, like a little over 60 victims, and you have to wonder like has that been going on just within the year that like it feels like it hasn't been going on since he's known Dr. Glenn, because again we established he's killed people since he was like 16, since the roughly he killed somebody at age 16, and then probably by age 20 he's been in and out of institutions, probably I don't know, post age 20 he's probably been, I don't know how old the kid looks here, but ever since he was out of the institution last time, he could have maybe been killing people since. So I don't know if that's maybe the vibe I always assumed with Muse here is that since Daredevil retired, he's been in operation. That was what my presumption was.
The actor Hunter Dewey, who plays Bastion Muse, he's 31 years old.
Well, that's the thing. They can always play him younger.
No. That's what I'm saying. So if we're going roughly like say 5 to 7 years younger,
yeah,
he's like.
And if he gets out of 20, he's probably like what 27 at the oldest.
Yeah, mid to late 20s.
Yeah, like 25, 27, which what have you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's the thing. I just feel my assumption that I in the image I kind of painted in my head about Muse was that again, this is a guy who creates the art because again, it's kind of filling he's responding to the lack of Daredevil and what the uprising has kind of been like. What is what's coming, and again, whether politically, again, somewhat politically charged, or just like in regards to the political climate of vigilantes, and just like the lack of Daredevil. Because again, he like think about it, White Tiger died, and he's put a mural up for him and kind of tribute to him. So you think, I mean, I think what maybe you as well imagined was that this guy was kind of like an art vigilante of sorts, or it was like fulfilling a crusade. But again, he's like a diluted version of being a vigilante in his own right, like a vigilante of truth.
Or it's like it could be kind of like a Victor Zsasz thing, where it's like Victor Zsasz, when he kills his victims, he thinks he's doing the right thing because he thinks that like their lives are so like meaningless or miserable that by giving them death, he's giving them like a sense of peace or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, here's again, mind you, this is all stuff that we can only guess secondhand. We don't know because they don't really talk about it in the show. I mean, if I were to speculate, I would say, I think I may or may not have brought this up when we confirmed the whole blood painting thing last episode, but the only thing that really makes sense to me, I guess, is that he's basically, it's the blood. It's kind of like blood on your hands, but it's like it's in the city. Like all these vigilantes doing what they're doing, and this is like what it's blood on the city essentially, or like
Yeah.
that's the consequence. Like the murder of White Tiger. It's essentially it's blood on the wall. That's.
Well, I mean, I think what also been interesting is that like there's always this idiom or this understanding that like art is a means to tell the truth in a
Yeah.
way that's compelling, and maybe like for maybe a version of Muse that would have been interesting for this show is that like, hey, with like things like the BB show or
I know,
whatever,
like if he talked to BB York or targeted BB York, maybe.
or made a point that like stuff like the news media or whatever, it's not really giving the truth. It's not giving the real truth, or whatever, like quote unquote. And like Muse could be this like populist outsider who's giving the real truth of what the city is, or what the world is through his art. And yet people die, but it's like crack a few eggs to make an omelet. Like Muse thinks it's for the greater good, but we don't really get that. It just feels like Muse, like the way the actor's playing, he's using the typical like serial killer, vibe, but we don't have a sense of like why does he want to kill? What is the point? Like, why art? Why do you just specifically kill your like take all the blood from your victims and then
It's
make?
a really good visual. That's a pretty much all we get.
I mean, maybe in a way, maybe he like is there gonna be an interesting idea about how like, oh, these people are so meaningless in their lives or whatever. By making them my art, they have a greater sense of immortality that is beyond their typical life. So anything, like I don't I shouldn't be the one to put like motives or ideologies, perspectives of Muse, because Muse, if you feel like in the show, he just brought in because he had an interesting look and had a cool, like dark vibe to him, and being a serial killer with a unique gimmick. And that was it. There wasn't any effort to like develop him to make him have a certain psychology or more. Like think of it this way: season 3, you had Daredevil, Kingpin, and then Bullseye just had their own unique perspectives and they intersect with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Muse, it's just crazy. He didn't really intersect with the Kingpin side of things. And Daredevil, it's like Daredevil. Like here's the thing: in season 3, Daredevil and Bullseye don't really have much of a like interaction relationship. They don't have like the sense of ideologies, but Daredevil Kingpin does, and Kingpin tries to manipulate Bullseye and makes Bullseye to who he is.
Well, that's the thing. Like Bullseye kind of spins off of like the conflict between
Yeah,
Daredevil
yeah.
and that's honestly that's kind of what I'm with. That's kind of what I was expecting with Muse as a response to what's going on between the two of them. But we didn't do that.
Or that like Fisk could just like throw it at Daredevil to like, hey, in your absence or in your presence, whatever, you inspire men like this. This is your masterwork.
Exactly. Like, and again, now mind you, we still might do a little bit of that going forward. He's going to like spin it, which again,
honestly, it would have been cool if like the way we did use Muse in this season, if he was a vigilante, but he becomes a serial killer over the course of the season,
that'd be great.
Do like Telltale Batman Joker, but with Daredevil Muse.
That's great. But he's kind of dead now.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, his point being, yes, I think so. Ultimately, just in what we have here, so with with his arc, like the episode arc, pretty much giving the guy, so I'm just being scary and cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like his hope was that the Doctor would appreciate his work and perhaps she would be a release valve that he could just tell everything to. But seeing her like want to go to the door, that mind we don't know this. He's a crazy serial killer who's now dead. We don't know these things, but it seems he definitely had a plan B. The plan B was like, okay, kill her if she doesn't like give me a thumbs up here. But he improvised in a panic. He's kind of improvised in a panic, which again, guns seemingly aren't really his style. Not against using the guns, but I'm just saying it just seems like that was like again like kind of he doesn't like not being able to go to his lair, and he has like the tarp and everything, and the plus fighting a vigilante, not just a vigilante, like the vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure throws him off his game, and of course it does very much feel like the whole Taekwondo thing was just to show okay, this is how we can actually fight Daredevil. Period. It's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the only thematic thing would be again the relationship to violence, but he hasn't really beat his victims up, so I don't know. Anyway, So at the end of the day, he ends up known and sending a message, but not a message of his own. The message is, it's Fisk, with his anti-mask, you know, kind of platform is essentially what the message that Muse ultimately serves. I mean, again, on paper as a payoff to Muse, I think that kind of works. The idea that he had a message, he had a goal, but at the end of the day, Kingpin just used it to his advantage to serve his thing. So he kind of took a guy who's all about trying to create symbols and get a word. Again, mind you, we don't really demonstrate this, but what at least it seemed, and then we paid off through serving the ends of the kingdom, spinning it to whatever he needs it to be. I like that, but again, it's a little messy getting there. It's cool looking, but it's messy getting there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. Okay, so Heather Glenn, we kind of talked about her a little bit already, so we don't have a lot here, but she again, we sidestepped a lot of her development for just teases of there's kind of chemistry here. I mean, it's physical chemistry, but that's just Matt Murdock. Most of that's Matt Murdock. Let's be honest. Um, you know, here's the thing. She's nice. She seems nice. She serves a practical plot role in that she connects Matt and Fisk in the season. That's the plot. That's the main takeaway that she has. And I brought this up before. The thing with Heather Glenn, to what I know, the little I know about her, is that if you understand the comics, she's very much kind of like she's kind of the one and done girlfriend. She's kind of like, okay, it's just a kind of a fling. Matt Murdock just kind of got bored with her because he has a much more exciting life, which again, that's the thing. Assuming that's right, we do represent that here, and we gave her a little bit more to do. But again, that's it seems like we tried bolstering up as much as we could because the comics weren't exactly a flattering portrayal of her. We kind of people have made the joke. It's very timely right now. A lot of people have made the joke about the whole Chase Meridian thing. But it's again, I think it's kind of a cheap shot. People can be therapists.
Wait, what's the joke?
That she's basically it's like the hero of kind of our Batman-esque kind of hero. The girlfriend, the therapist girlfriend of the Batman-esque.
Oh, I see.
Basically, she's like kind of like better Chase Meridian, or at least more like smarter Chase Meridian, or what have you.
No, yeah.
I mean, I can easily see people making the joke, but it just feels, Anyway, my point being, like, again, I like that we gave like a practical connection between our two paralleling kind of like figures in the show, and it happens to be the girl. And the fact is, we have a character who's very one note in the comics, and we seem to have given her some stuff to do, but still, I think we're giving her more stuff, even with the little stuff that we do have, that we should be giving the Kirsten.
I think with this way, it's like I kind of wish Heather was like someone that was a little smart enough to maybe get close enough to know that Matt is probably Daredevil, right? Like, therapist, like I would have been like, think of it this way, like how cool is it that in certain iterations, Batman, like Commissioner Gordon, like Jim Gordon, is smart enough a cop that he could realistically know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Or in Superman, Barry White is smart enough, or like Perry and Lois are smart enough reporters to know that Clark is Superman. And Daredevil, like I mean, not in say the Netflix show, but in the 2003 Daredevil movie, like Ben Urich knows that Ben Affleck is not Ben, Matt Murdock is Daredevil. That
no, Ben Affleck's actually Daredevil in that movie.
No, yeah, but you get what I mean, right? And
I get it. Yeah,
it would have been so cool for Heather to be someone who is extremely insightful, intuitive, like any good therapist. And I think it would have been interesting for her to kind of, over the course of the season, like just notice things that are odd about Matt and connect the dots together, and then figure out that Matt is Daredevil.
I have a feeling she's going to do that, but you're right, though. It would have been better if we maybe planted it a little bit more. Like, all in this episode seems to be all the planting that we've done.
Well, because the thing is, for me, it's like, I think that would have made Heather really cool as a character, and I think it would have made it, in my mind, it would have made sense for why Matt's into someone like Heather, right?
Not but, she also can't put that together unless Daredevil comes back, which he only did like last episode, the end of last episode. So I mean, she puts Rohith. That's like she puts it. I'm not saying your way wouldn't have been better, but I'm just saying technically what we have is what you're asking for, just condensed into like one episode where she's making the observations. Then after the traumatic event, she's put it together. It seems, it's like at least she's like a step away from putting it together. I mean, we'll have to see how the next episode goes, but you see what I mean, though, right?
I see what you mean, but it's like I just didn't feel like it's utilizing her skill set as a therapist to suss that out,
Yeah.
right? And that's I think would have been really cool is that for Heather, she's like really good at reading people and being able to like emotionally guide others, and depending upon the patient, there's very low success. But she's a good student of human nature, and I think it would have been so cool for her to kind of like over time maybe things like, okay, there's something off with Matt, and the way he goes about or certain things he says or the inflection or whatever, it would have made it so satisfying to kind of basically have Heather like do like a mystery and her figuring out that her boyfriend is Daredevil. That would have been such a great review. Also, leave it this way: like Kirsten, like she's a smart enough lawyer. I mean, I guess you could say that Foggy is is a great lawyer, and he just found out Matt was Daredevil because Matt just happened to be lying on the floor of his apartment. So I guess for me, it's just like it's the why factor for me. And Heather, like this is the most characterization we get of her, and it's like it's interesting, but I kind of want more. And I just feel like this show, these characters deserve more, and these actors, I feel like probably would have had more in the original version of the show, or could have given more, but they just weren't given the opportunity. So that's the thing that's kind of unfortunate is that like, oh, this is like people are not loving Daryl again. I think it's less than the Netflix Marvel shows. And for me, it's like these characters have the potential to be really interesting and make themselves. Maybe they're not on the level of Foggy and Karen, but they could be worthwhile in themselves. They could be characters that people can be genuine fans of, but the show just doesn't invest that time and energy to. And I just don't know if we'll be inclined to do so next season if there's promise of bringing back like the old Netflix Marvel characters. Maybe Foggy and Karen both come back in some shape and form. So why is there an investment or care or inclination to even develop or flesh out these current characters? That's the kind of thing that's unfortunate for me.
Right. Anyway, I mean, just in terms of her, just in the peril that she's in this episode, I like that we saw her like trying to navigate the dangerous situation, cleverly, or at least as composed as she could be, in the moment. But didn't end well for her. And I felt really bad for her. Like it looks like he's trying to bleed her out slowly. That's kind of the vibe that I got with how he was doing it. Then of course things got complicated when the cops showed up. And it is very telling that we gave her a big moment. I mean, she killed the bad guy.
Yeah.
She shot him a bunch of times. Which again, some shades of Karen Page there, which it feels like that's what they're going for. Yep.
Yeah, but there's more justification for Heather in this case than maybe Karen.
That's true. I mean, she was technically held at gunpoint.
Yeah, but she was the one that's only armed, and Wesley didn't appear to have like a firearm on him, right?
Well, that's the. Hold on a second. No. That was his gun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like Karen shot an unarmed man, whereas for
no, he put the gun on the table.
Yeah, and then Karen took the gun, and then instead of just walking away with the weapon, she just unloaded it on Wesley. Whereas for Heather, like Muse was like charging at her, or was about to kill her, like right there and then. If she so
that's true.
There's more of a cleaner argument for self-defense for Heather than there was for Karen.
Well, sure. Anyway, but yeah, it's a very traumatic thing that she kind of lives through, and you feel for her. And at the end of the day, here's the question I had with her. At the end of the day, do you think this experience makes her lean more into the vigilantes given Daredevil saved her? Because she expressed like her next book would be exploring mask and vigilantes and such. Or do you think this experience puts her off the vigilante path, like Trump like kind of scares her off of it?
I think it's dependent upon if she finds out about Matt's identity.
That's. I mean, what do you think before she finds out Matt? Do you think she's scared off?
I think she's more inclined to write about Matt, but if she finds about Matt's identity, then she's inclined to not do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, lastly, real quick, Daniel Blake. We do a little bit with him here. We're seeing his loyalty, to the Kingpin paying off, where he's been, he's been charged with handling BB Urich.
Mm-hmm.
And now we don't know what the result is here, but he basically has been. He's given her the option. He's given a lot of power to lord over here. He's like, hey, play ball, or our campaign will ruin your life.
It would have been so scary, so cool and scary for like Daniel to like give her a phone and it has like a live feed of like her friend from the club, and and there was like a sniper beat on her or something to the fact that it's like,
maybe, but that still feels maybe a little too fast for Daniel.
I mean, that's the thing.
Like Buck would do that. I don't think Daniel would do that.
Or maybe like, or maybe like there's a release of a story of like, BB like altered a story or something like where that she breached journalistic ethics. Yeah, now I think if he's like, hey, I remember you lied about this story or something, and your editor prevented you from printing the story, but I still have it in our system, and if you don't say it, I can really tank your career as a legitimate journalist. Something to that effect. But I kind of wish we saw what those consequences were.
I mean, we're seeing Daniel go down a dark path, and the big sell line has been like you're going to see Gandolfini play, basically a young man who kind of like is being mentored by the Kingpin. He's going to kind of have a sobering realization as that goes on. Like he'll have an upset. Basically, he'll go from him wanting to be and him being kind of trapped.
I don't know about you, but it's like Daniel Blake and Kingpin. They feel like it's like if Kylo Ren and Raider were working together. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Daniel Blake is this big fanboy, and he's not as cool or collected or sophisticated as Kingpin. But he just has like a bit of heart and like fanboy obsession with it.
Well, yeah, so it's going to backfire on him, absolutely. It's the question if Kingpin's going to end up having to kill him or if he's just going to get, taken out or something on his own accord.
Honestly,
or maybe he'll be the fall guy for the Kingpin. Maybe
or no, what if Vanessa finds out Adam and like tries to attack Kingpin whether directly or indirectly, and like Daniel like steps in and like saves Kingpin's life or even like dies. Yeah.
I think that's good. I like that. Yeah. So here's so I like that BB did over again, like, there was a breach. I feel there was a breach in journalistic ethics in what BB did with Daniel, and I liked on Solo. He was kind of right to get even with her, but still like just I don't know, lording over the threat the way he did though.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like she even the fact that she copped to it, like look, you were high, and the opportunity was there. It's like there's something like something very House of Cards in that moment,
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Very Zoe. I'm blanking on her last name. Was it Zoe? Crap. Anyway, the point being Zoe Barnes. Yes. So I do worry we're not dwelling on the whole Ben Urich connection enough with BB though, which again is like the weird that to me is always like the weirdest holdover between the original version and this, where it's like BB feels like, okay, look, we can't do Ben Urich for obvious reasons, but we're gonna give you a BB Urich, so it's the next best thing, right? It feels like, okay, look, the idea that Urich, for example, I feel Karen might have some opinion that might want to reach out to BB Urich, don't you?
Yeah.
But no, we're not. There might be some interesting but I would imagine Karen would get BB out of a jam, which I don't know. Maybe we're going to reshoot and put that in the next 2 episodes. I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anyway, it's time for the blinding moment of awesome.
I'm blind, Matt Murdock. I'm blind, Matt Murdock.
There we go. Presented in Murdoch Vision. So, I guess I'll go first with mine. Okay, so because mine's kind of more towards the top of the episode, yours is towards the end. So the moment for me, it was kind of hard picking. Like there were a lot of really great. There's some really really good blinding moments of awesome. Yours takes the cake, obviously, but mine. When I was rewatching the episode, it just really hit me that this feels like a Kingpin moment, kind of like what we had with the whole like him rallying the troops. This feels like okay, this is kind of like getting into the stuff I love about the Kingpin as a character. So basically, Kingpin explaining to Buck why he hates Daredevil the way he does. It's just it's a great kind of quiet scene that puts the series and the history between these two characters in context, at least, through Fisk and how he feels about the matter. It's just this. I love the fake laugh, by the way, at the start. For the sake of the city, ha! It's just the petty vitriol, which I love in a villain like the Reverse Flash. Kingpin, Reverse Flash, are some of my favorite villains in all comicdom, and maybe especially as kind of in our between the Flash show and Daredevil. I just love that in the villains, the mean pettiness of it all, and it's the fact that it always distills it down to thematically what we had at the end of Daredevil season 1, where it's basically these two grown men who we've seen as children in the show, and it boils down to two kids getting in a fight in an alley, and this that wonderful moment, the Kingpin, where he's petulant like a child, as the big child that he is, just saying, I wanted to make this city something beautiful. You took that away from me. Just
you took everything. I'm going to kill you.
I'm gonna kill you.
Take your shot, and then boom. Oh man.
I just love I love that when he's just beating him, he's doing the keep kicking him thing with the billy club. This city doesn't deserve a better tomorrow. It deserves people like you, like my father. It's just again, like he's associating Daredevil with his father, and it's oh my god. Oh, it's fantastic. It was the point being is with that in mind, these are the kind of moments that kind of bring me back to again, just like the inner child that is still every time he looks in the mirror kind of moment with Kingpin, where he's just like this. It's personal because it's business. It's the fact that he mentions the 10 years of business infrastructure that was in place, which I think he's talking about even going like pre-Daredevil with the whole basically the era of season 1 of Daredevil with the with the Union Allied, kind of profiting and basically the money laundering and profiting off of the the reconstruction after the incident, that whole thing. So basically, that's he could be talking about a little bit of like I think it all encompasses. Frankly, I think it goes from the start of there and Daredevil season 3 in terms of the infrastructure that he had. Also, the Disney Plus years. We'll get there in a second. But regardless, just the infrastructure, the business that he had, because again, it really feels like he's still really heard about that alleyway fight. That's kind of the vibe I really got from this scene, not just with my own preference, but that I don't know, just the way in which just the hatred that he's conveying. It feels like he's still heard over the first arrest that he's talking about. It was full. The business was fail proof until Daredevil challenged his crusade. And again, him saying it's fail-proof just makes me think of that radio conversation where it's a thing where, again, they both had... The most interesting thing about Daredevil Season 1 was that they had a similar goal, but they went about it very different ways, which is what makes a Marvel villain very interesting. It's the Doctor Doom principle. It's a villain who thinks he's the hero. Until we get to the whole, ill intent thing, which, I'm the ill intent. Anyway, so post season 3, we do a little world building here. Just the fact that after season 3, Daredevil has been taking down, and we saw this with Echo. He's been taking down all the small operations. The blue collar millionaires, like blue collar millionaires. Like I made people so much money, and the fact that Kingpin felt good about himself investing in the little guy of the organized crime world.
Mm-hmm.
He felt good about himself, and essentially the idea, it seems that he was he had rebranded. He'd been rebranding on this path after season 1. In terms of like that's how he got his infrastructure back after the arrest in season 1. That's kind of how he rebuilt himself and had money. That's where he got his fortune from, essentially, that he could Well, after he spent he spent pretty much all of it, not counting the protection fund for Vanessa. while in prison. That's essentially what was all the season 1 infrastructure. So he built all that capital back. I know it sounds like I'm talking Wall Street right now, but I'm going somewhere with this. I just love these. It boils down to the pettiness of just the hypocrisy and the sanctimony, and I guess as he puts it, his righteousness. He's just so upset about his righteousness. About Daredevil just bringing him down, illegally, while of course by day, lawyer, who again, it's the fact that he hates the fact that Daredevil as a character can walk both sides of it. He can be, the legal crusader by day and just this law-breaking vigilante by night. And again, it's just the root of like the anti-vigilante sentiment and the whole silly little costumes like vendetta that he's had since the beginning. The fact that Daredevil beat him through both sides of through law and beat him in his own game and beat him outside of it. It will always be the sticking point between them and why he just can't bury the hatchet like that coffee scene would imply. He's been looking for an excuse. That anger's been there the whole time, and he's just kind of he's been simmering on it, and again, it's been eating away at him with his frustration within trying to go straight. So it just shows that Kingpin, he can't bury the impulse to get even and go toe to toe with Daredevil, or tango with Daredevil. He just can't bury the impulse. And I think the scene just conveyed that dynamic very well, and just kind of a nice little monologue of sorts. Yeah, I really liked it.
Mm-hmm. That's a good moment. So to go into mind-blinding moment, awesome. I don't know if it's just the way my brain is just processing where Daredevil was great. When Daredevil just throws his billy club through Muse's chest and just pushes him down and drags him through his white canvas, painting it. That's where the lizard brain and also my normal brain was like, yes, give me more.
Well, you also love violence, Rohith.
Seeing it on fictional programs, not in real life. Violence is not the answer.
Whatever. Look, I know you have to have a legal disclaimer. It's okay.
But no, I think I think that's is a great moment for Daryl to save Heather, but also it's just a great moment to show that Daryl means business. This and then when he broke Devlin's leg in episode 4, is like, God,
bloodlust ever ceased with you, Rohith? That's what I want to know.
Sometimes the devil has to come out once in a while.
Let the devil out.
Yeah. Oh man,
that's what people imagine when we do the podcast. We're on the opposite ends of the hall, just yelling at each other. And just
I'm just beating you next to a blank white canvas, and the blood is. That's like Tiki's Vanessa. Stop it, Rose.
Oh, why? Don't make him Vanessa.
Fine. We'll have Jacob be Vanessa.
No, I don't. Oh man, why am I always stuck with him? Anyway.
All right. Insert random woman relevant to your life, Dragon, and then we'll have.
Okay, we're gonna make Gabby Vanessa.
All right.
Anyway, the point is, yes, the point. Regardless, just the conflicting ideologies, just usually with words, but in this case, just just violence.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, look, me being the sucker I am for grappling guns, I always love that function of the billy club that we've been able to employ here. So I too am with you. I was cheering, like, less at the violence, my bloodthirsty little friend, more at the, oh my God, he saved her with the billy club. That's awesome.
Yeah, another great billy club moment. That was my backup moment. Was when Daredevil just lands at the crime scene. He's investigating, and when Officer Powell comes in, he
gets a little distracted, and then Powell walks in.
It's like Batman. If a cop came in, he just throws a batarang and knocks the cop out.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. Yeah. But no, I'm sorry. I want to mention too. I'm with you too. I love the whole canvas thing too. That was great. But yes, the instinctiveness of this to me feels like a okay, tell you what, I'm going to transition here. Okay, do you have anything else you want to throw in there? You want me to?
Oh, we can transition.
Okay, we're going to transition to the Braille Trail. Yes. So, just to pick up where we were here, I love the running gag, the kind of the underlying running gag of this season, where it's like we love beating the crap out of Officer Pal. He's no pal of ours. We're just gonna throw the billy club at him right in the face, just on instinct, because he's a scumbag of a cop. I mean, it really
He's
did.
the Turk Barrett of this show.
Well, yeah, but Turk Barrett has more flair.
And he's a human trafficker, so I feel like so that's the thing. It's
But
just
look,
like,
it's fun. No, here's the difference, okay? It's fun to beat up Turk Bear because we know he's done bad stuff like that. But again, he didn't enjoy doing bad stuff like that. Pal has no I don't know. Like
I mean, that scene was fun.
Turk Barrett felt bad about getting Pops killed. You get the sense of that, but I think they didn't spell it out. So maybe what do I know? The point being, though, I don't know. Turk's like we laugh at Turk when he's not being like brutally beaten, just like beaten efficiently and on the regular. It's kind of like would you take one severe beating, or would you take just kind of a recurring not so severe beating?
I feel like a severe beating because then you can move on afterwards, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It feels like Turk Barrett, he went for it's not going to be as bad. It's like, oh, what was I thinking?
Yeah. And to go here, I have a little bit of a rant in regards to for this section.
We hit Pal in the face. It's fun.
No. I have a rant about what Daredevil does in this episode.
Okay.
So he arrives in the crime scene.
Yeah.
The people, the police, the NYPD take their photos, dust for prints, and Matt takes out his glove and puts his hand on all the canvases, all the Muse's work.
Yes.
Does Matt not think? Do you not think the NYPD doesn't also check for prints after the fact, chain of custody? If some how do you not worry about Matt Murdock's prints? If you're trying to protect your secret identity, you do not want to have any of your fingerprints or blood in the scene of a crime, in the aftermath of a crime scene.
Okay, to be fair, all right, he does need to feel the artwork to see it.
I know that.
Now, look, I think his initial plan, again, I mean, Daredevil, if he weren't so caught off guard by it being Heather, I'm pretty sure he would have gotten out of there scot-free and would never have thought to have look for the prints on him, because, again, they know who it is. They know it's Muse. They know they can't find him, but they know who it is.
Yeah, but if on the chance that Muse was captured by the police, imagine if all those canvases could have been collected and documented and done further testing to make an iron.
Well, remember, they have to know what they're looking for to connect the prints. So if they find another set of prints, maybe then, but still they have to comb through. Now, mind you, the risk here and the credence to what you're saying is that Pal, who does get knocked out, he could put 2 and 2 together. Yes. Okay, but
this is something I have to tell you this about. So when I was trying to be ministered to practice bar in the state of Texas, part of being administered to the state bar of Texas, their biometrics was involved.
Yeah.
Putting your fingerprints and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Man, if New York has the fingerprint scans, I don't think it would be too imagine you have the fingerprints and you have all your databases open in New York. How long until there's a match for Matt Murdock, right? In the system.
You mean just basically just for it's like a legal thing where they just take the fingerprint scan just like on principle versus if you've done something wrong. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because you're trying to be administered to be you try to be U.S. citizen, you have to get your fingerprints and all that stuff. There are.
So you mean to tell me right now we're at a point in time where basically it's we take the fingerprint, we can just run a database and literally everything's there. It's not even just you're specifically looking to match them to another person. It's just in whatever's in the database we match against automatically.
I mean, I'm not an expert on how fingerprint databases are like.
Well, I know is before there was like a digital thing. There was a lot. Usually, there was a lot of matching. So that's
You have to look. You have to know what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. You have to, for point of comparison, you need to know what you're looking.
But like we're in the 21st century, and specifically with MCU, where like technology and like data analysis is such a high level, right?
Yeah.
So like it wouldn't be too hard if like to be Mr. the State Bar.
It's like a post. Usually, it's like still the same headache for post convictions because they didn't have that back then. But
Well, I mean, still, like if you're like, because the thing is, like for any sort of police department or for any police officer that gathers evidence, you have to maintain chain of custody and make sure that there was anything tampered. Like, here's the thing: Daredevil was lucky there wasn't any like video cameras.
Well, also remember no body cams. These are bad cops.
Daredevil is able to do his job because the police are
bad cops.
Oh man!
Remember, this is the task force. The task force are very specifically chosen to be bad cops.
Yeah,
he knows them. He knows Pal's there. He knows it's the bad cops.
I mean, he was surprised by Pal. He didn't like.
Well, no, I think he was less surprised that it was Pal. He's just more surprised that Pal. He was distracted.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
The thing, he was distracted. He's not surprised that Pal was there. He's just distracted that he was so wrapped up and he forgot. Oh crap, Pal's here.
I think it would have been fine if he just took the cannabis with him or whatever.
He might have. We don't know.
Well, actually, but then it's like you're just taking evidence, right? And maybe that evidence could have been helped, but yeah, that's that. See, that was just for me.
Again, dirty cops. They're not going to notice it. They looked all the paintings being the same.
Or honestly, it would have been fine for me if like the evidence was already gathered and like you know like how for police departments they have like an evidence lab or evidence storage room.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice for Matt to maybe come in as Matt Murdock and then like feel around for the evidence and then done the thing there, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, there's also another thing you need to consider, Rohit. I mean, I'm not unconvinced that by the end of the season, well, I mean, I guess there's only like a couple of, I don't know, still by the end of the season, but season 2, maybe more likely, we might out Matt.
Maybe.
I mean, again, we're gonna at some point they have to get to the whole "I'm not Daredevil," sweater. So at some point,
not to just do any dramatic stuff about Matt Murdock being known as a vigilante. No, I get what you mean. Here's another thing. Here's another thing I kind of want to mention. This is already like Matt's hands. Like Matt takes his gloves out and he caresses Heather with his hand or touches her with his hand.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that like Heather kind of just like when
did you want to be weirded out by it?
No. I kind of wish that like Heather put two together when like Matt caresses Heather with his hand as Matt in the hospital. Because I really need to see the episode if like.
Wait, when he was Daredevil, was he touching her face like that?
I don't know if he was touching her face, but like he had his hand out. He took his glove out and had his hand out and like was like caring or like just making sure Heather was okay.
Throughout that scene, I was like paranoid. Put the glove back on. Don't leave the glove there.
Yeah, that's my. Well, it's for me. It's like, does Heather? I would have been cool for Heather to kind of like, oh, like that touch is familiar. Not as Daredevil, not when Matt was Daredevil, but when Matt is mad at the hospital. It's like, oh, like I felt. Oh, it's like I feel like it
feels like Saturday night.
Well, like that scene, like how for like it's not Spider-Man, but there's a specific superhero thing where like a character recognizes like the civilian identity is the hero because they like said a certain thing or kissed them or whatever. Oh, end of Spider-Man 1, like Mary Jane thinks that like realizes that Peter or has a suspicion that Peter's Spider-Man because he kisses her at the end of the funeral and reminds her somewhat of the kiss with Spider-Man. I feel like there should have been some moment like that.
Right.
But neither here nor there.
Okay, and anyway, handsiness aside. Okay, Sister Maggie's cross. So again, the cross that he's wearing from Sister Maggie in season 3.
Did Matt? Oh, Matt didn't. Yeah, Matt didn't wear a cross on the necklace in seasons 1 and 2.
No, he didn't. No, because no. So it's kind of a neat little carryover, neat little nod to season 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. So again, he's like I said, kicking the crap out of Pal, just a fun runner, just because he's a scumbag cop. The moment here's what they would, I just have like this disdain for Pal, aside from just like the obvious. That scene in I guess episode 4. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember. Oh yeah, episode 4. Sorry, scene in episode 4 where he holds the badge to his chest. Like it says, my father was, my grandfather was, yeah, and you dishonor the badge, you just
Well,
scumbag.
maybe his entire family is all corrupt cops.
That's what he said. Like the fact that yes, they're all corrupt cops. It's just it's like you're trying to put this like a badge of honor, like you're all dirty cops. It's ridiculous. It's Pal trying to justify, like he tried to kill a witness.
Yep.
Anyway,
Who do you think is a worse? Who do you think is a worse corrupt cop? Him or Bullock and Flash and Cape Crusader?
But it's not a fair question. I mean, look, yes, Bullock and Flash or Flash. Bullock and Flash. They're worse by comparison. Yes. But Pal's still not good.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say which one is worse. Doesn't mean I'm not saying both are good, but
yeah, I mean, yeah,
worse.
Yeah, I gotta say. Well, I mean, again, they unleashed like Firebug. It's really bad. So I mean, I have to say them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it because they failed upwards. That was their other thing too.
Honestly, I would not be surprised if the anti-vigilante task force was still in effect, like post season 1, season 2, and whatever. Then maybe they do the similar plot line with like Gladiator, Melvin.
Oh, that's to me that's okay. There's two bucket list things in terms of the stuff. In terms of the stuff to pay off from the Netflix era that we didn't do, which again, so far, it's a short list. So far it's like for the main thing, obviously, this is even what I'm talking about. The DDs, we got to add the Ds.
The double Ds.
Yep. Yes, we got to add the double Ds. Beyond that, and obviously just returning cast, like your Turk Barretts and such. Gladiator, like full on Gladiator, which with the MCU, we now fully in our corner. We could absolutely do. We built it up. We can pay it off. Assume we bring Melvin back, which now we can. But the other thing too, the one thing we could have done, no matter what version we were doing, Stiltman. We got to do Stiltman.
I think another thing to pay off is that we need to see Daredevil with his guide dog.
Okay. You mean Deuce the Devil Dog?
Yes.
Look, I would like to do that, but I don't think they're ever going to.
Which is more likely, that Matt will have his seeing dog Deuce, or he'll have his like weird twin brother, or the plot line that he pretends?
Well, we've mentioned the twin. We've made a joke.
Well, not good, but like imagine we just had like Charlie, like another like we have Mike and Charlie Cox. It's just like plays them as this like very
okay. Look, the most we're going to get is that we'll do another gag about. He'll make a joke about a twin brother when he's outed. That's what we'll do.
Yeah.
That's that's the most we're gonna look. The devil, look, the dog would be funny, but I just think it's like you. Plus, I mean, I loved
have the dog go out at night with the mask, and it's like Batman Ace the Bat Hound. It's like Daredevil and Deuce the Devil Hound.
My favorite thing about the dog was
what?
So in the comics, yes, the I'm not Daredevil shirt. Yes, the sweater. Yes.
Mm.
So in the comics, I believe it was Foggy Nelson. Foggy bet the dog in the game of cards against, I believe it was Blind Al.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not Blind Al, against Deadpool. And Deadpool won the dog, and he gave the Blind Al just the irritator.
That's awesome.
I loved it so much. Anyway. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. So Cole North again. He seems to be our kind of our lead guy here, and again, he's the one with the arc from the comics. So I mean, look, we just introduced them. I don't think we have enough time to do anything with them now, but again, if they show up in season 2, I think Cole North we're gonna do some stuff with him. He had that moment though where he took, he agreed. He said, "Yes, the task force. This is the task force who stopped Muse." Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets killed off by Punisher.
That is a good question. I mean, I feel if we shortchange him, that's absolutely how we're going to do it. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the very least, here's the thing: if he does get killed with Punisher, I hope it's because for an episode he's going to be a really formidable. I think he's either going to be a really formidable bad guy as the task force, who's going to make a plea, but not plea, make an argument for what they're doing, and then Punisher will kill him as like the answer to that argument. Or again, maybe he's involved now with all the cops, just like the Punisher, and then he has a change order. I think those are kind of like the two paths we might take with them, but it's a guess.
Mm-hmm.
Rare sight of Daredevil in the daylight.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is. I mean, he's not out in the broad daylight; he's in the office, but it's still like it being like clearly day is certainly an interesting thing.
We've only done this twice. This and She-Hulk.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably see. Well, wasn't it like? It wasn't like completely night. In Echo, was it?
Well,
it was like evening.
I thought it was like I thought it was like shifted from like the wee hours of the morning kind of a thing. I don't know, but I don't know how much of that was lighting and how much of that was like actual sun shining through. So I thought it was lighting. I don't know. All right, fine, maybe 3 times. The point being, like full on kind of like kind of a daylight setting, very rare thing with Daredevil. Let's see. So the color theory, as I always love to go on about the color theory, the whole red, white, and black. Now, mind you, we didn't have a ton of thematic payoff as we would have hoped, but still, though, the visual of just like in the red paint, Muse representing red, white, and black all at the same time has been really cool. And it's the fact that in his last moments, we did have that awesome, like the red blood on the white canvas thing, and just like mixed in with Muse's colors. And I love when he's strangling Heather's eyes are red or like blood red. That's really cool. Just throwing that out there, just it's kind of a nice little continuation. Just like, we didn't do enough with the whole thematicism of the red, of the blood paint, but it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Bamonte, real restaurant. So at the end, we're in a real restaurant. This is an Italian, I believe one of the oldest Italian restaurants in New York that essentially was, I could be wrong here, I want to say it was the inspiration behind the Italian restaurant in The Godfather. I'm not sure about that, but don't quote me. Point being, actual Italian restaurant that we shoot in here that was historically favorited by the 5 families. Not batting an eye on that one. Hey,
no. That's took me a moment to read this. I mean, that's a cool Easter egg.
Yeah. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, Daredevil shutting down Kingpin's operation. So we contextualize the scene from Echo, where that's why Daredevil's there. And we kind of assumed that's what he was doing, but now we confirm like he's doing that for everyone. So basically, he's sanded away a lot of Kingpin's his empire.
Mm-hmm.
Buck Cashman, of course, is the character Bullet from the comics, and he saves Kingpin with a bullet
through a silencer.
Still, it's cool though.
No, I was just adding more to your description.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Okay, so Muse. So in the comic, I don't think we unmasked him. He had no backstory. He was like an amorphous, just like he was basically what he was.
Yeah.
And he did die though. He did get killed. Like not by Heather in the comics, but just by like somebody, like an ancillary character, somebody else in the comics. That Daredevil didn't truly beat Muse. Muse was killed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I think that about does it. So we're going to thank the folks that showed up, or maybe will show up in the future. I want to thank Rohith for showing up.
Glad to be here.
Yep. All right, again, we look forward to again. So, Rohith, am I correct? Episodes 8 and 9, or we still got 8 and 9, and are they going to be separated, or are they going to be together?
Yes, they'll be separate.
All right. But yes, we will be going back. This is the new stuff though that we shot, right? 8 and 9. That's
yes.
It's kind of a that's basically the new and improved version. At least hopefully the new and improved version.
It'll be, according to someone that watched all 9 episodes, they said that where the season ends, like they wish this was the season, quote unquote, season 4 of the show.
That hypes me so much. You cannot believe. Just again, episode one and just that as a promise is like, yeah. There's one little bit I gleaned from a trailer, like a still, that I'm dying to get to within these last two episodes. Like, oh dear God, please let that be what I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we will get there. Anyway, that's all for now. Until the next daring installment of Discerning Daredevil, Born Again.